Kuzuzangpo, you are watching Bhutan This Week, our weekly news magazine program with me, Sonam Rinchen. Our top stories. His Majesty the King granted audience to people of Trimshing and Kangpar Geoks under Tashikang Dzongkhag last week. In Dewathang, His Majesty the King granted audience to Samrup Jongkhar Dzongkhag staff, local government representatives and officers and soldiers. And Her Majesty the Queen Mother Tsuringpem Wangchuk met with the key stakeholders to address the issue of drug and alcohol abuse by the youth. His Majesty the King granted audience to people of Trimshing and Kangpar Geoks under Tashikang Dzongkhag last week. Thousands of people from Kangpara, Trimshing and some parts of Kaling and Lumang Geoks gathered in Trimshing to meet His Majesty the King. This is His Majesty's first visit to Trimshing and Kangpara Geok. His Majesty said he is pleased to visit Trimshing and Kangpara Geoks and meet the people. His Majesty wished Chunipalosa Tashidalek to the people. As His Majesty the King interacted with the people, vultures hovered right above the celebration ground. The vultures are considered a good omen in Buddhist belief. His Majesty hosted a toka for the people and entertained the crowd with various entertainment programs. A lottery draw was also conducted, where essential items were granted as prizes to the winners. People said they are blessed to receive audience with His Majesty the King and continue the celebration of Chunipal Losar in the Geok.
Isagu antazu anzumchina jinamda ngachina sisemgai age angidisu aldisu anzumchina nasme tseodu seo anzumchike namda ngachina semgai sila
undawan halarang jonma manjani uraga jonma namsamegani simrangni marawa anjurutya ye hana hikbi mase anjur namse shonopin ko anjur.
Later in the afternoon, His Majesty visited Lhahas in Trimshing and Tsangpo to offer ngendar and prayers. His Majesty also visited the Basic Health Unit in Trimshing, where a team of doctors is providing free health checkup and minor surgeries and operations on the command of His Majesty the King. Compiled for Pema Namge, Sonam Rinchen for BBS News. His Majesty the King granted audiences to Samrup Jongkhar Dzongkhag staff, local government representatives and officers and soldiers in Dewathang.
En route to Dewathang, His Majesty travelled to Kangpara in Trimshing, where hundreds of villagers had gathered at the school ground for an audience with their king. His Majesty met with thousands of people gathered in numerous groups along the highway to serve Tsochang and welcome His Majesty the King. In Womrong, the elderly farmer who won a brown Swiss cow through a lottery draw during the National Day celebration last year in Kanglung offered milk to His Majesty the King. On the way to Dewathang, His Majesty visited Samten-Chuling Animgyumba, where sculptures depicting the life of Buddha are being built to commemorate the 60th birth anniversary of His Majesty the 4th Dugelpo. Samten-Chuling Animgyumba is in Mukhozor under Lumang Geok. His Majesty was offered Kusung Thugi Mende at the Gyumba. Today, His Majesty the King granted a special audience to the army personnel of Royal Bhutan Army Wing in Dewathang. Compiled for Pimanamge, Sonamugen, BBS News.
Her Majesty the Queen Mother Tsuringpem Wangchuk met with the key stakeholders to address the issue of drug and alcohol abuse by the youth. During the meeting, Her Majesty the Queen Mother pointed out on the need for an aggressive campaign against drug and alcohol addiction.
The meeting was held as a follow-up of the recent visit of Her Majesty the Queen Mother's visit to one of the largest treatment of drug dependence center in Thailand. During the meeting, Her Majesty the Queen Mother said the fight against the addiction has not been effective till now. Her Majesty said it is the biggest concern in the country, which involves many youth who are future of the country. Her Majesty said in order to move forward and ensure the future is in good hands, it was important to tackle it in an aggressive manner. It was also important to work collectively to make the campaign successful. During the meeting, the committee comprising of key stakeholders was formed to undertake the aggressive campaign against the alcohol and drug addiction.
Possibly the campaign will direct towards creating awareness amongst our population and particularly amongst the youth, so on the harms and ill effects of drugs. So this basically will be the theme of our campaign.
There's chances that some stakeholders might not contribute much and some might overdo it. So that is one concern that I foresee right now. Otherwise, and also another thing is that when we do this campaign, because at the end the receiver is the public, so we are not sure how much they will take it seriously.
Her Majesty said it was really sad to hear people dying because of drug overdose and alcohol. With the number of youth addicted to drugs and alcohol expected to increase over the years, it has been found that professional rehabilitation center with dedicated staff and infrastructures will be necessary. The new rehab center is soon going to be established at Saluna in Thimphu. Meanwhile, Her Majesty the Queen Mother expressed for the need of effective detoxification center in the country. Her Majesty said rehab and detoxification center should go hand in hand. Detoxification, which is cleaning of blood, is important for the rehab to be successful. The detoxification unit in the hospital was found to be with psychiatric ward and lacked specialized professionals.
The inconvenience is actually we're trying to treat people with alcohol and drug addiction along with the people with psychiatric problems. It is little too small at the moment, and sometimes the demand is more than what we really have to offer them.
The detoxification center, which was supposed to be established in Gidagom, had to be cancelled, and its fund for the center is said to have been diverted to the Mother and Child Hospital. The Health Minister, Tenzin Wangchu, said the meeting will be held with the key stakeholders to look at the legality and possibility of establishing separate detoxification center. Chetan Dupchu, PBS News.
For the first time, the Prime Minister and the Economic Affairs Minister met with members of the Association of Wood-Based Industries. About 5 common problems faced by the owners were discussed, and they were assured that the government would respond by the end of the week.
The Natural Resources Development Corporation's plan to establish sawmill and retail outlet, sawmill owners said, is in contradiction to the government's policy to develop the private sector. Sawmill owners said that this would hamper the businesses of the wood-based industries with no room for competition. The association requested if the government could reconsider NRDCL's plan.
It has been about 5 years since business wasn't good. There were not many construction activities taking place. In fact, many of us were left without work.
To this, Lunchen Sringtopke said the plan for NRDCL to establish sawmill is a way to set a standard in the market. However, he said that the government would discuss the matter with NRDCL. The association also said that the Woodcraft Center be retained as a training center instead of handing over to DHI. To this, Luncheon said a proper study needs to be conducted. In the meeting, members informed the government that the businesses of the wood-based industries have been greatly hampered following a decision from the Labour and Human Resources to reduce the import of foreign skilled workers from 2 to 1. They requested if the government could allow at least import of 2 skilled foreign workers. Luncheon on this said that it is the objective of the government to encourage Bhutanese workers and hence declined the request. The association also submitted that construction materials like sand and timber be made accessible and affordable. There are 330 wood-based industries, including 114 sawmills in the country. Ishori Gurung, BBS News.
Bhutan's annual inflation for 2014 was recorded at 8.2%, a drop from 8.77% the previous year. The consumer inflation reached an all-time low of 6.3% in December last year. In the previous month, inflation was recorded at 6.6%.
The decrease in the rate of inflation was contributed mainly by decrease in the prices of fuel. Food prices registered the lowest inflation. Prices of imported food items deflated to negative 0.10% in December compared to the previous month, while prices of domestically produced food items recorded their inflation at 0.2% during the same months. Decrease in the price of fossil fuel helped reduce prices in the local market, as Bhutan imports most of its commodities from India.
Hema beochin hema gi dauna beochin dila anzum sumle khichi di datu gi dauna beochin sumja chenga be chomna suni MRP beochin di sumja jipu jeni ime suni ni hema dauna beochin 1300 ba chong wala di this ani ga this dauna ni 50 discount junu wala ani 250 be chong discount.
The average annual inflation for 2014 was recorded at 8.2%. In the previous year, it was 8.7%. Officials from National Statistics Bureau said inflation has dropped both in terms of domestically produced food items and imported ones. The purchasing power of Nultrum dropped 16% compared to 2012 prices.
The value of Nultrum or Nultrum's purchasing power decreased by 16% compared to 2012 prices. In other words, if you bought Nultrum 100 worth commodity today, it would have cost you only Nultrum 84 to buy the same amount of commodity in 2012. Nirup Gelson for BBS News.
Gungtong, or living behind ancestral homes, is not uncommon in rural Bhutan. In Nabji and Korfu villages in Trongsa, more than 40 houses are lying empty. And the farmers who are left behind say they have to bear the brunt of this trend.
The village elders say this house has been lying empty for more than 15 years now. When we visited here, we could see the rural water supply scheme and the electricity connection in every household in Korfu Gyeok. Yet the houses are lying empty.
Villagers here share stories of problems and challenges faced by them.
Once people get education, they never return. This is because they do not want to toil in the field.
Since we are left behind, we have to take care of our houses. We also have to bear all the taxations and other issues in the village. And those who left are not bothered about anything. It is a loss for us who are left behind. They said the empty households have become a burden for them. The fallow land are covered in bushes and have become a hideaway place for wild animals.
We have so many activities here in the village. We have to contribute labor. We also have number of religious activities where we have to perform in the community. So I'm worried of how we can keep them alive, since it has become a responsibility of the community who are back in the village.
29 households out of 81 from Korfu village and about a dozen households out of 65 are lying empty in Nabji village.
Now, with the incoming of the facilities and the road connectivity, people here in the village are expecting that these people might return back very soon. Surjaman Thapa, PBS News, Korfu.
One of the present government's pledge was to provide a potila each to over 1,000 chioks in the country. And this pledge is now on its way to becoming a reality. 70 households in the eastern Dzongkhag received a power tiller each recently.
The Agriculture Missionary Center is distributing a total of 70 power tillers in the 6 eastern Dzongkhags. The preference is first given to the eastern region since power tillers are rare. 15 Gewaks in Tashigang received the power tillers on Saturday. The Agriculture Minister said the power tillers would not only enhance land utilization and promote agriculture commercialization, but also generate rural employment and income.
This is not just the pledge from the government, but this is done looking at the necessity of the people. Right now, we can only provide it to each Gyok. But from now, looking at the necessity, we might even have to provide more power tiller Chiok-wise. For instance, for 5 Chioks, we might even need 10 to 5 power tillers. So this is our aim.
Lempo Ishtoji also said the ministry has plans to bring in around 2,000 power tillers with support from different agencies in the next 1 to 2 years. The Agriculture Missionary Center will receive 239 power tillers by the end of May, which will be distributed to the other Gewaks. The next phase will look into providing the power tillers to the Chiwoks, which will be managed by the Gewak Extension officers.
They will clearly explain the hiring charges, the procedures. And as of now, with the government initiative and with the government plan to encourage agriculture production in the village level, the hiring rate has been subsidized, basically covering only fuel and operator costs and basic maintenance. For example, for the power tiller at the Gyok level, we have kept it at 1,400 per day, inclusive of operator, fuel and minor maintenance. So this is how we expect them to operate and allocate and deploy the machines at the Gyok level.
The power tillers are brought in with the support from the Japanese government under the KR2 grant. 8 Gewaks of Hlunsi and Tashiangsi and 17 Gewaks of Mongar have already received the power tillers. It will also be distributed to Pemagasal and Samdup Jongkhar. Kampal Fachichi in Tashigang, Sonam Chudan for BBS News.
Korfu and Nabji Primary School in Trongsa was decided to merge to form one. But both the people of the village want the merged school site in their village. The issue on the conflict over the merged school site is not resolved yet. It was found that schools in Nabji, Korfu and Nimshong did not have a potential to be a primary school since the strength of the students was less. Dzongkhag Education Sector informed the people of 2 villages to decide the site of the school to function as full-fledged primary school. But both wanted the merged school to be located in their own village.
The
school can be merged anywhere, but we have shared the same thing with the officials while discussing the matter. Since the Gewak is located near Nabji Primary School, it would be better here. People of Korfu say the school was there since long time back, and Nabji say they have more number of students. So when all staff stays in Nabji and if school is located in Korfu, it would be a problem. All the offices are located near Nabji school, so I feel it would be better to be there. We can take our kids to school, they can reach to school whether it is in Nabji or Korfu, but it will be a problem for the staff working in different agencies. There are a number of offices located in Nabji. The staff will have their kids and family, so if there is no school near them, they might even refuse to come here.
People from Korfu say that they are willing to offer their land to construct school if the government chooses full-fledged primary school in Korfu.
If the school is merged at Nabji, there will be a problem. All agencies are located at Nabji, so if there is a visitor in the Gyog, all arrangements have to be done by the student. This will only disturb students and hamper their studies. Also, the school is located between two streams, and during summer, the gushing sound of stream will disturb the students.
According to Education Ministry's guidelines, a primary school should have a minimum of 100 children from pre-primary to class 6 with at least 15 students in pre-primary. The Dzongkhag education officer said if in case they decide a place for full-fledged primary school, the school will be provided with more number of teachers, stationery and boarding facilities. Starting this year, the Dzongkhag has decided to send all class 5 and 6 students to Langthel until the villages decide for particular place. Compiled for Sujaman Thapa, Sonam Rinjin for BBS News. The much-talked bypass road to Pasakha from Manglabari in Jaigong, India has finally got through. According to Phuntsiling Thomde officials, the works are expected to begin soon as notified by the Indian counterparts. Officials say with this impetus, the perennial traffic congestion problem will be eased. Along with the bypass, the Thomde is also coming up with other plans to address the issue.
At this time of the year, if you are in Phuntsiling and think that driving is the quickest way to get around, perhaps you should consider rethinking. It is much easier and faster if you choose to walk. For instance, from the place where I was, to get here it took me about 15 minutes by car, when in actual it would have taken a little over 5 minutes had I chosen to walk.
The traffic congestion is at its height, especially between 8 and 10 a.m. and 4 to 6 in the evening. Vehicles, heavy and light alike, have to ply through the same road because of just one entry and exit gate. About 200 trucks ferry raw materials to Pasakha every day. This further aggravates the situation. However, with the coming up of the bypass from Birbari, an Indian settlement about 7 kilometers from Phuntsiling, the traffic congestion is expected to ease. The talks for this bypass were already underway and accepted in principle a few years ago. However, works gained momentum only after 2013.
The road that is coming from Bibari, which is just above the Singpara, the bypass is going to happen from that way. That is funded by ADB under SASIC project. It's taken care by the Indian Government of India, and I believe that has been already handed over to the PW West Bengal. West Bengal has already tendered out the work to the contractor. In fact, now they are just waiting for to resolve the land issues in that area. I believe it's about 6.5 kilometer from Bibari to Pasakha. All the heavy trucks will go from that side. So here we will just get maybe the third country goods and some small consignments.
To monitor this bypass, a land customs station will be constructed at Ale in Pekhajing, Pasakha under the South Asia Sub-Region Economic Cooperation Project. The Asian Development Bank is funding it. Other plans under the same project include the development of a mini dry port near the State Trading Corporation Limited and also a northern bypass. With a mini dry port, trucks need not come for clearance to customs office, which today is located in the town area. This will further decongest the traffic. The project is expected to be complete by 2018.
For that project, we have been allocated about 10 million USD. So within this project, within this amount, we are supposed to complete the project. The status of the project is that the consultancy recruitment has been started. In fact, we have already opened the tender. The technical tender has been opened, and the financial will be opening on this 30th of January. And after that, we will be recruiting. After a month, we will be recruiting the consultant, and this consultant will carry out the estimate and designing activities. And once that is complete, then we will be recruiting the contractors to carry out the work.
Meanwhile, Thomde officials said for the opening of the second international border gate near the mini dry port, talks are underway. The Ministry of Home and Cultural Affairs is taking up the issue with the Indian government. Compiled for Sonamongdi, Taranimbu for BBS News.
It is one of the pledges of the government to establish daycare centers in offices. Although this has realized in one ministry, many office goers continue to rely on their parents to look after their children.
59-year-old Tsering Wangmo, like any other elderly, is at the National Memory Choten in Thimphu to do her prayers and circumambulate. She's not here alone. Tsering has brought along her grandchildren. She has to babysit them while her son and daughter goes to work. And this is no new task for her. Just as Tsering Wangmo, it is a common sight at the National Memory Choten to see other grandparents babysitting their grandchildren. While many of the grandparents speak of joys of being with their grandchildren and shares the thrill at the opportunity to be playmates with a grandchild, some think it is not serving them right. For the office-going parents, they do not have a choice but to leave their children at the care of their parents. Tele is one of the many office-going parents who wishes that the government's pledge to establish daycare centers at their workplaces would realize. Compiled for Tsering Yanki, Dikichoran Dorji, PBS News.
Tsering Wangmo's grandchildren are lucky to have her take care of them when many children are deprived of such care when their parents are at work. For those without anyone at home to look after them, parents arrange all means to keep their children somewhere until they get back from work. But the question is, are the children in safe hands under such arrangements?
Tsering Paljor, who will be turning 4 next month, has been lying in the hospital bed for almost 2 months now. He is fighting for his life after he fell down from the 3rd floor of a building in Lobisa last month. Tsering Paljor was kept in an internally arranged daycare center of the Bhutan Power Corporation in Lobisa. Enrolling him in the staff daycare center changed his life forever. From an active little boy who could talk, walk and run, he now lies in the bed helplessly. Doctors say he has suffered critical injuries.
I think the impact was so huge on a small child and probably the child had landed directly flat on ground with head down, and this has caused a fracture on the front part of the head, and this has damaged almost half of the facial bone, and this has compressed and caused injury to the brain behind, and it is so severe that we could not do anything much, and we can see ourselves that patient is like vegetative, bedridden, can't speak, can't even move around, and he's just moving his right hand and left hand, but it's so difficult that not even give much hope of good recovery to live a normal life.
This incident is now allowing doctors to caution the safety of the houses and also on who should be held accountable during such mishaps.
It's like very sad that our children who are left either with the grandparents or with a babysitter, and I don't know how safe our houses and our buildings are. Many of these children coming from fall injury are probably falling from the windows, and under the care of the caretakers. And I still sincerely feel that there's no safety in our houses.
Such mishaps, according to Sringpaljo's parents, could be prevented if better daycare centers with better facilitators could be put in place as pledged by the government. Or the other option could be to allow domestic workers across the border. With camera persons Sring Dendup and Sangi Shofel, this is Sharab Zangmo reporting for BBS News.
Well, that is all we have for you this week. Join us again next week for yet another edition of Bhutan This Week. Until then, it is goodbye from me. I am Sonam Rinchen.